you guys would have also had someone from the majority party there to explain
And
whatever.
I think it's Dornink is going to be here today.
Gene, yeah, as far as I know, yeah.
I think I know there was a benefit that we had to go to.
Yes.
And so I know that that's why the senators weren't there, but, or some of them weren't there, but anyway.
Yeah, okay.
It was just one of those things where I was like, oh.
Yeah, and it was just kind of a different meeting in general for us too, because we had one of our members of the executive committee from AMC who passed away.
That's the one I was talking about.
Okay,
Yeah, Blair. That was, yeah.
Yeah, there, yeah.
Right.
So normally the people that show up to run our AMC meetings, we're not
Good,
there.
are you?
So that's your notes.
It's like you have more people.
No, once, I think, yeah.
I do. I've
Yeah,
got
but I, as a real.
Baker's time.
Okay.
Still short staff, but by one on Baker's.
Hey, Mike.
Hello.
Sorry, I couldn't hang tough to the end last night. Wow.
You guys went for a-
It's better.
That was 9:30 last night.
Yeah.
by the time I got home, so,
I had a city council.
yeah.
I left the,
Work session afterwards.
Yeah, well, the meeting was 2 hours and the work session was an hour and a half.
Yeah.
to two, so.
I normally am able to, because on Monday, the first Monday of the month, I have 4 cities that have city council meetings.
Okay.
2 of them start at 5:30 and 2 of them start at 7. So I'm normally able to do 2 of them and then the following month do the other 2.
Okay.
Was not able to. I was planning on heading over to Brownsville or Dexter and
She was missing those legislative midnight sessions, so she thought she'd hang out. with
that's the
us.
truth.
There was a lot. There was a sidewalk thing that took a good amount of time.
ooh, that did run long, didn't it?
Yeah, we had a couple of good reports. John, the DCA giving updates, Nancy gave a Discover Austin update. Couple of technical things in the work session. We spent a lot of time talking about police department and staffing
Okay.
and actually preliminarily authorized.
Can you hear us,
going
Danielle?
From
Yep.
36
Okay, great,
officers.
thanks.
Okay.
So that was a good discussion, an initial lovey lock and
Sorry.
all the other fun stuff. So it was really good stuff. It was probably the meatiest city council meeting I've had yet in my tenure. So I did feel bad for the poor gal who was
She did.
mayor for the day, you know. and it was-
I did.
You just had former students.
I'm glad she wasn't like an 8-year-old kid, because that's sometimes who wins those things, so.
I
You
think
can
mom
tell
would
she-
have been there saying,
Yeah, here's the, oh, it's.
Well, there is a lot of one-time or some unexpected monies coming in and some like our county program aid, local government aid is, is increasing. And so there's some good news. So
There is.
So this is a good year to be able to make some of those changes.
It is, and it definitely helps, but also just looking at, what we already know we have contracted and then some of
Yeah.
the increased costs. In particular, the increased costs in 2026, like what's scary is we can just look at that and it's literally already eaten up, like without adding staff or anything.
Yeah.
We're at a flat levy. All that money is gone within a year. It's crazy.
Yeah.
How quickly those numbers.
Yeah.
that's what our schools are telling us.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what our schools are. But even with the money that was passed, because of the restrictions and the mandates and everything, it's actually, for several of our schools who came and testified, they testified that it's actually a net 0 increase. That's all.
Yeah, but you know what? We're still happy to have what we have and we'll make it work. And we'll have to a 4-hour city council meeting.
Honestly, if you just open up a municipal, what do you call it, dispensary.
Yeah,
Give it one of the licenses.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the answer to all of our.
I mean, they have muni liquor stores, right? So
Cities do. I think
there's a couple of folks in town who might have thoughts if we said here.
but if you get desperate, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Save a life.
It's always great, Trish. You're looking for ideas. Always creative.
Oh,
That's good.
It's always the money I spend on something. Yeah, okay. Putting friends.
Yeah, a lot of them here.
Oh, yeah, fine.
Hey, Michelle.
Hi, Lynn, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. So we can have a little bit.
I know you're used to sitting in the corner, Jake, but it's a cool poop.
Okay.
It's similar to that.
We finally just got one of those for our for WDI. It makes things a lot better.
Here's a chair down here.
Good.
Bye, Joe.
I don't know. I must have heard that the senator was coming.
Well, Senator Dornink always has good news, and so does Representative Mueller. Huh? Sometimes we just have to focus on.
Focus on the good.
Yeah. There's a spot down here, Israel.
Surprised we voted you our new leader. So.
How are you?
Yeah, how are you?
Good.
Should we kick it out?
Sure. Should we have introductions since we have lots of new
Lots
faces?
of new faces, sure. All right, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the full room today. So it's nice to see everybody's faces, and since we have so many new faces in the room, I think we'll go around and do some introductions. We do have a couple chairs up here. So I'll go ahead and kick it off. Joe Bauer, Wells Fargo Bank. I'm chair of this committee as well as the chair of the board right now, and executive committee for the chambers.
And I'm Brenda Lander. I'm membership manager at the chamber.
Eric Ramos, Southeast Minnesota Association. You can set the XQLP and I'm a board of directors.
Trish Harren, Mower County Administrator.
Angie the Pelt, Mower County Environmental Services.
I'm Val Sheedy, Mower County, Statistical and Works Director.
Chris Heichel, Fairway Mortgage and Executive Board for the Chamber.
Michelle Morehouse, Riverland Community College and Chamber of Mass.
Gene Dornink, I'm a general contractor, small business owner, and part-time legislator.
Boston Chamber Board and
Jennifer Zag, I'm an administrator at Mower County Health System and a member of the chamber board.
Mike Postma, manager for workforce development, career force center, and even more part-time city council.
I'm Michelle Ahrens. I'm with ABC 6 News and Sales.
Representative Trish Mueller, and public school teacher.
Deanne Wagner with Doma Title. I am an escrow officer.
Bob Hartman, working at SMQ, and I'm station manager.
Mike Hanson, Mower County.
Lisa Gresham from Doma Title.
Carol Green from Doma Title.
Israel Gonzalez, licensed in the French Mexican Kitchen. Also at the board.
Feeling Hanson with the chamber.
All right. So we might as well jump right in.
We have
lot
a
of-
few people in line.
Oh, my bad. I suppose we'll introduce them.
Okay. Hi, Mark.
Hello, Mark Nabar, Austin Utilities on the chamber board.
Kelly.
Kelly Levy, Austin Utilities. I'm listening in because I'm interested in the topic this month.
And Danielle.
Hi, Danielle Morum, Morum's Tree Service and Agrelon.
Up here, Ralph.
All right, so we will jump right in with updates from Senator Dornink and Representative Mueller. If we would like to kick things off.
So I guess I start with the part-time legislator. That's what we're supposed to be, is part-time. We bring our gifts, our talents, and our experience to help make legislation for Minnesota. And that really wasn't what happened this year so much. So this is supposed to be a budget year. So 20 on the odd numbers, it's a budget. You focus on the budget. And then next year even would be policy and bonding. Well, the bonding didn't get done last year, so bonding. But what they did is they focused so much on policy, and then towards the end, they got the budget. So their top 10, I'm just going to run through them real quick. Number 1 was the pro-act abortion. Number 2 is paid family leave. Number 3 was strengthen the freedom to vote elections. Number 4 was the blackout bill. Number 5 was catalytic converters, which there has been a problem with that. Number 7 was the disability waiver, which we have a crisis in the long-term care nursing homes. So that was an important one. That's one that we tried to do last year with $1 billion that we had, but that didn't make it. School lunch was number 8. Child care credit, that's a good one. Step out 10 was refining bill, which that was an interesting one. And then they finally got to Senate File 12, which is Social Security, which is what people ran on, was tax relief, Social Security. So you see most of those were policy things or things that were more things that just they wanted to do. And as we started, I remember the first couple of days is how we were going to work across the aisle and take both sides and listen to this us, and we're going to work together. And they had one party rule, and that's not what happened. They did not work with us much. So it was a very frustrating year. So then switching to the omnibus bills, the budget bill, there's about 16 of them. I'll start with some good things that happened. So veterans, they always do a really good job of veterans. So I supported that bill. It was a good bill. Agriculture is usually, that's one of the committees that I'm on. That's usually really nonpartisan. Good things happen there. And again, that was the case. There's a couple of things I didn't like. There's some of the environmental things that they wanted to push more, and Senator Putnam did a nice job and listened to us, and he did a pretty good job of keeping some of that environmental things that was going to hurt farmers and agriculture. The bonding bill was, we voted no at the beginning. It was really a difficult time for me because they were trying to push us. The only chip we had was the bonding chip. That's the only time they needed us in the whole session. They needed 7 votes of ours. And this is my opinion. What I saw is they did not like that we had that. So we had this little chip. I don't play poker, but if you did, we had one chip, bad hands. They have all the cards, all the chips. So we're saving our chips. We voted no because we wanted tax relief. So we kept our chip to try to get Social Security. So that was the only time we could step in and say they needed our votes. And it was hard because it put a wedge between us here in Austin and me and Elver Lee, because it was really important. So that's why we did what we did. I heard and I tried to tell the mayors and the leaders what was going on. So, hey, this is what we're going to do. And this is the why. It's politics and it's ugly sometimes. And so fast forward to the last 3 days, then we did cash our chip in and we got $300 million for nursing homes. And that was ours. That's what we had to give. So we offered 5 different offers. I'm not going to go through those, but really good offers, trying to get Social Security. That was our tax relief, give the money back. So 3 days left, and we had given them, like I said, 5, or I think it was these 5 offers. And so they came back to us, and they weren't very easy because they always threatened us. It's like, this is it. Take this, or we're just going to go all cash. And we knew they wanted the cash. But we just, we didn't want to lose the bonding either because it was so important. So they offered us $150 million for nursing homes and $150 million for rebate checks. That was it. And so then we kind of talked about we needed much more, but we weren't going to get it. So we decided, how about $300 million for the nursing homes, because that is so important, and then try to get something else. So then we got 100 or 200 million, I think, more for local projects, GOP projects. So we got 500 million with that chip that we would have got nothing before. And so just infrastructure, just just your bond for infrastructure projects, it's debt. So this would have been cash to use for, so good question. So that was kind of the bonding, and that's some of the good things that happened. So we did get, I think probably what you know is we got the 14.5 for here in Austin, the wastewater treatment plant. We got the 9 million for Alberley, and the dredging project's been really, really important to them. It's the last phase, and they're really excited about that. And then 2 billion, or oh, I should say 2 million, 2 million for Alberley's wastewater treatment plant, kind of phase 1, and if you remember in 2020, 7.5 million came to Austin for phase, well, I'm not sure what, but they got money then. So they have to have a new wastewater treatment plant also. And that's MPCA making the water quality a little tighter. That's neither here nor there, that's just the way it is. And so, but if the state's gonna mandate it, they gotta help our small business with funding. So that's really important. I don't know, I could go on and on. Paid family leave, I'll just talk about business a little bit because that's really important. Paid family leave, there's some concerns there, obviously. It's not going to be until 2026. The concerns is it's going to be 400 new government employees to get this thing going, and it's just a lot of. It was a thing that was pushed a little quickly. I'm not. If we poll it, it polls good. This is important to workers, and it's important to business owners too, because they want to do good things for their workers. But it's more that one size fits all. So it's not a lot of ideas taken from us. And then, but as I explained more of what it's going to be, then people didn't like it as much. They don't know how they're going to implement it. And as I was in labor and industry, I always said labor and industry takes both, and we as legislators are supposed to be the and, to bring together. And that was just it's going to be taxed from the employee and the employer. We wanted a cap. At first, they weren't going to give us a cap. They said, no, it's just going to be 0.07%. But now I think the cap is 1.1 or 2, I think. But so they pushed it out. They don't even know how they're going to. It's just going to be a monstrosity, I think. And then the other one that people don't hear about as much is their earned sick and safe time. So they got paid family leave. That's 2026, and then earned sick and safe is for everybody that has one employee or more, and that's for every 30 hours you work, you get 1 hour of earned sick and safe, up to 48 hours in a year. You can roll it over and get up to 80. And one thing that's concerning is it's not always about the money, it's the paperwork, and that's one thing that I tried to explain that many times. It's, these mandates and these things, it's just, well, it's just that they're lying on the, for the business owners, saying, well, yes and no. I mean, they already have so many lines, so you got to pay family leave, earn sick and safe, and then back to the tax. Social Security was going to be totally eliminated. They didn't do that. They did partial elimination of that. And then really there isn't, well, there's some good things. I guess I'll talk about the good things that were in the tax bill. There were some good things. And a lot of the tax bill was done in 2022. And Ann Rest did a pretty nice job working with Bill Weber, which that was another committee that Bill, Senator Weber, was the minority lead. So I'll give you the 10 things that are kind of good. They have the child tax credit, the renter credit return. Well, that's, we want supply side more to the property owners. They got some rebates. The rebate's going to be small, $260 per person or $520 per couple. There's some public safety in there, LGA, important, 80, I remember what it was, 80 million, I think, for
What's LGA?
local government aid. So that's really important to, sorry, you get these acronyms and Social Security partial, that was one. Local sales tax, for many cities, tax and financing. And then the bad thing, and I'll end with this because I don't want to take all the time, because like I said, so much happened. And I'm available. I try to make myself available for one-on-ones. When you call me, I'll meet with you or talk to you on the phone. E-poll tabs is one thing. I don't know. Does everybody hear about that? What they did with those? So they, the tribes have a game, kind of got this where they're going to take our charitable gambling, some of the gaming's away. So it's going to hurt our charitable gambling that support youth sports and all the different things that they support. It won't take an effect until after the election next year. So imagine that. So we don't know. I don't know full impact. I don't do that, but it's very popular, and they paid off the amount of money that came in. The state had paid off the stadium, so it's very popular, and it brings money in. It brings money in not only to the state but also to local charities, and it's really important to communities. So
the tribal community asked them.
well, there's a game. So when they got the games that are more like they felt they were theirs, gambling. I don't know, maybe you can help me a little bit on this, Patty.
Yeah, so when they told us that we couldn't have anything that looked like a gaming slot machine. And so e-poll tabs, the physical e-poll tabs, were not anything that looked like a slot machine. When it got digitized and all you had to do was press a button and it did all that stuff, they claimed that it encroached onto their authority of what they have that looked like slot machines. And so the proposed change was that you would have to press the button each time instead of just once to have the things open up. You then have to press it, I think, 3 times to have each of them full, opened. We were frustrated with that, but could kind of okay, fine, whatever. In conference, it changed to something completely different to where basically it will get rid of it altogether. We were told that that's actually not true, blah, blah, blah. However, when they read, Representative Stevenson, who is the author of this bill, read a testimony from a gaming board guru person that I can't remember the name of, he said, we really don't have any idea of how this will impact us. It could be, $2,000, it could be $50,000. We don't know. And we're like, good, so let's enact that. So they were able, the compromise was it would be delayed a year to kind of figure out what's going on. I was just at Lyle graduation, and one of the scholarships was from charitable gaming. And I'm like, well, that works. So
They did that late for us. We didn't even see it.
no, that language came up out of nowhere. So regular pull tabs will be, from what I understand, will be okay. Those are a lot more expensive because of the fact that they're paper. And honestly, the other reason why we're so frustrated is because the current games that currently exist, not any new developed games, were okayed by a lawsuit that happened from the tribe. So they took everything to court, and the court came and said, no, the games that currently exist right now do not violate the spirit of the law. And so it just feels very frustrating to have that ruling and then to say, you got to get rid of all of it. And we're like, fine, if for new games, fine, but let's not take away the games that are already.
For a chance, it's just being used as a bargaining chip for the group that wants to pass the sports gambling legislation.
So I've heard that the sports gambling, that was also a Representative Stevenson bill. They gave him all the big stuff because he lost by 200 votes, or he won by 200 votes. So I think when that was kind of put together, there was a lot of people who were very pro gambling that were just like, this seems like it's a sweet deal for the tribes, really anything that's going to help Minnesota. And so I know that's still being worked on. I know there was going to be talk about trying to shove that through the last moments. And, we would like, so, we'll see what happens.
I just have a question. The earned safe and sick leave, that goes into effect January of 24. So, just on our side, we are, watching for the guidelines coming from the state. And then we'll probably do, a workshop or something to help everybody figure out how do you interpret that? What's that going to mean in your business? So we're going to follow up on that and bring some programming forward. So maybe we can understand it in layman's terms.
The fines are gonna be high. Be 1,000 up to 10,000. We try.
Is that for paid family leave or ESSD?
Earn sick and save.
Oh, okay. And all that is stackable. So paid family leave is stackable with ESSD. Earn sick and save.
I'll stop.
Save, what do you mean by that?
Earn
Save,
sick and save.
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 Yeah.
So it's they can just, for almost anything, they can take time off and
By they, you mean an employee, right? Okay.
Oh, like I just say, I need to save today.
well, they're saying like domestic violence or
That's
something
all.
like
I
that.
mean, oh.
That's
okay.
what they're saying if there's a. And they don't have to say, I need to go home and I need to be, that's what their angle is. And the family member is quite extensive and they can actually write their own note on why they're, so it's kind of expansive.
So, yeah, are you telling me if their toe hurts in the morning, they don't have to report to work? Basically.
You know, I'm not gonna say, it's gotta be up to the employee and they'll, hopefully, most people, what I tried to explain, it's, you guys have small businesses, there's just a few people, you know your people, so you're gonna know them. And they're not gonna do that, but when you get bigger businesses or in bigger cities where you don't know, but in local communities, you know your people, and very few people are gonna do that, so I think it's.
Right.
So there's going to be abuse, of course. I'm hoping in smaller communities there won't be, and when you know your employee, that relationship, there's a problem with it.
You said 1 hour every 30?
Yeah. If they work 80 in a year, you got to keep track of it. So it's paperwork. It's just, you know, so if you have,
And
we
the
tried to
paperwork
do.
for that is not the same as ESSD. Two sets of different.
So we tried to get the employees up in our committees, and I'm sure they did it at the House too, like 50 or 20 or 5, and then we tried to do exempt seasonal workers. Because in the farm agriculture, you know, you got people helping with picking rock and spring putting crop in, and fall driving the crop, driving tractor, crop, and whatever, all that. And they finally exempted people that are in hospitality. And on the floor, I talked about that, and I kind of, well, anyways, that's enough. So you get that sideline. But so we did, there is a carve out for hospitality, and then there's a list of everything that, it is kind of complicated, but that was the only carve out that I can remember, other than the union's got a carve out.
You already give your employees PTO at a different plan, do you have to do this on top of that?
Yes.
Or you have to, or the paid family leave, you got to match.
So what that means is employees are gonna get less vacation time, less PTO time, because now you're forced to give, you know.
I was fortunate enough to hear from an HR lawyer kind of talking a little about this. She didn't get into specifics, but she said a lot of organizations, if you have a PTO, she said it'll probably mostly cover what, where you might have to change is like, for instance, if you make them submit a PTO request, then you approve or deny, like some of those pieces may have to change. But you wouldn't necessarily have to add the 80 hours a year. If you already give somebody, say, 3 weeks PTO, as long as the 80 hours of that are compliant with the legislation, you wouldn't have to add that. So,
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what I can add. I do have some figures if you would like, you know, we have so the committees I was on was education and public safety. And so I worked really hard to do what was best for our schools and for our law enforcement. Many of the things in law enforcement, we worked really hard to get our alternatives to incarceration for non-violent drug offenders. That was supposed to be dedicated money for Mower County, about $160,000 a year would have been dedicated for that. And instead, that was in the House bill, wasn't in the Senate or whatever, and it got negotiated out. It got negotiated out in conference committee, and so, which the justification for that was that Mower County would actually be receiving more money because they the formula for how DOC, Department of Corrections, is funded got changed so that we could get some more money from Mower County, and that is true actually. So when I'm looking at some of these, estimated public safety aid for small cities, Austin ended up getting the $1.1 million for that, which is great. We do see, and I'm just trying to do this quickly, for local government aid, Austin was able to get about $9.7 million. And so that's, I have heard from lots of people from many of my small cities out in rural that local government aid, LGA, is like 90% of their budget. And so being able to help our smaller cities is really important. There also is a housing aid, this is one-time money that is coming, and Austin is getting about $120,000 for that. I don't think that that's going to necessarily lower the cost of your housing, but it will. But at least you can do with it what you want or need with that. One thing I would like to point out, though, is since I was on education, and I know this, I'm sitting here in a group of business people. Education, though, we talk about, you guys need workforce, you guys need workers, and so education is the foundation for what you do. What's very hard is the minority party gave an education plan that many of our districts were in favor of. It was more direct money, less restrictive money, and would have actually sent more money straight to our schools. For example, that's the wrong one, yes, I did. Trish Kate. Learning how to use a computer sometimes is hard. So for example, for Austin, the school ended up getting about $5 million in FY24 and $6 million in FY25. It comes with about 65 plus mandates, and the school also has to supply unemployment insurance for their paraprofessionals. Let me give both sides of this argument. Paraprofessionals were the only employee category that did not qualify for unemployment insurance as a seasonal employee. Almost every single one of them, construction workers, blah, blah, all of them qualified for unemployment insurance. So I understand why we wanted to make this more of a level playing field. What's difficult about this is that our schools are in desperate need of workers, and now they have an option, and we are already seeing it. I'm getting reports from several people around the state. People have been offered jobs. Now they are refusing those jobs and going on unemployment. And so that has been a rather difficult thing for our schools, especially as we know we need students who are going to, or we need people who are going to help our students during summer employment. To kind of smooth that transition, the majority party gave about $135 million to kind of tide over the schools that they believe will be there for about till 2027. I think it will be gone this year. It's a reimbursement, and so the school will get a bill in fall for here's all the people that you now have to pay for unemployment insurance, and then they pay that and then get a reimbursement from the state. And if it's not enough, then you just get a smaller reimbursement because they can't prioritize a school. If we would have gone with the minority parties plan in FY 25 of 24, Austin would have gotten 5.4 million instead of 5 million. And then in FY 25, they would have gotten 7.8 million. And there would have been like 3 mandates rather than 65. And there wouldn't have been unemployment insurance because we wanted to find something that would have worked better with our schools. So that is a difference for Austin. That is a difference of $413 a student that was left on the table. And that's something that I really wanted to be able to talk to people about because, you know, we need workforce and we need to be training our students and making sure that we are preparing them for the jobs that you guys need. And one of the things that I'm working on really hard is we're doing work-based learning and also teacher residency so that we're able to find some more teachers. But we did receive about $700,000 in a grow your own grant. And so that's kind of exciting. The senator went through almost everything else when it comes to business. I would like to say that child tax credit that we're talking about is only for couples who make less than $5,000. So if your family makes less than $35,000 then you can qualify for this $1,800 tax credit. So it's not really tax relief, it's just kind of moving that money around. And if you want, I did have someone call me about this, you can receive up to a $1,500 tax credit for buying an e-bike. So yay for us. Which is great. I had someone ask me about it. I was like, yep, go ahead and buy an e-bike. So that would be great. Other than that, I heard you, I tried to show all the different money streams that are coming in. And I'm sure, I won't speak for the senator, but for me, if we could have prioritized money like that, all of us would have been a yes. But to put some of that with, like, there's some money for roads and bridges. I think we got some local aid for small city roads and bridges. But to put that with a $10 billion gas tax increase and delivery fee increase and tab fee increase, fishing license increase, boat license increase, like all of that is really difficult to vote yes for. So what I said at the city council meeting yesterday was we have, during my first term, we had a budget of $52 billion. By the time the governor gets done signing all this stuff, it will have eaten up our entire $18 billion surplus, plus $10 billion more of tax revenue. So that would be about $72 billion of state budget that will have been signed into law in 2020.
Can I ask a couple questions? That public safety money that's one-time money, and how is that have to be spent in 1 year or?
Most of the time not. Most of it, like ESSER, like the ESSER money is still, you still have until like 25 to spend. Okay. So we have multiple years to spend it. This one-time money is different than the formula change that I talked about for DOC. So this is that, and I have to go back and look at the parameters and how to actually spend it. Much of the money, when it comes to some of this money in public safety, went to OJP, which is the Office of Justice Program. And that's where like our domestic violence prevention with Tori Mueller. I want to talk about, yes. I have too many people that I'm trying to remember. Her funding comes through that. And so like, it's really important to continue funding that. At the same time, this also funds hundreds of nonprofits that we don't have much authority or understanding what they're doing. About in the public safety, I think it was about $50 million went to nonprofit. In housing, about $11 million went to nonprofits. In environment, close to $30 million went to nonprofits. Education, $34 million went to nonprofits. And so it's been really difficult to kind of keep track of all of that when we're trying to focus money towards what I would call our core function.
This money then that when unemployment for paras, how is that really going to help us in the schools with our graduation rates?
Well, if you want to try to connect those together, feel free. I agree with you. Here's what I'll tell you. And this will be a longer answer than an intense speech. My mom was a para, and she decided to be a para because she was able to then stay with us during the summer. The function of that job in the school building during the school year is vital, and we cannot function without them. I was a public school teacher and I could not function without my paraprofessionals. Could not function. The function of that job year round, people who signed those contracts knew that they did not get paid during that time. Regardless of that, some of those people who did that did it for a purpose. Like when you're substitute teaching, you have flexibility of hours. It's a lower threshold of getting, like, I think to be a para, you have to have a high school diploma, and that's it. Maybe associate's degree. I'm sorry if I'm misquoting that. And several people got summer jobs. What kind of kicked this off was during COVID, many of those summer jobs weren't available. So those people who catered like for weddings or did photography for weddings, they got lots of money during the summer and they were fine. And they had flexibility and they were able to be with their kids and all of those things. When COVID happened, that revenue stream dried up. And so they were like, holy crap, we need to get something. And when they found out that they were the only people that were carved out of this unemployment offering, that's when this started to be a discussion. I had heard several testimony of people who said that during their summers, their children are going hungry, they don't have enough money. And in that case, let's talk about what we can do for our paraprofessionals, that they're able to be paid maybe a little bit more. They're able to have more training so they can have some, qualifications that allow them to be on a higher pay scale. Let's talk about that. But to your point, to simply say, hey, you don't have to, okay, we're offering you a job. Oh, you don't want it because you want to stay at home. Okay, now you're on unemployment. It was written into law that schools cannot levy for this. They cannot levy for this. So I don't know where this money is going to come from. We just got special education cost subsidy dramatically reduced. I'm worried that this is going to become another cost subsidy, or now it's going to take care of their general option.
Why is it not an option just to keep the same base salary for peers and spread it out over 26 pay periods and require that?
And I don't know the answer to that. I could ask, I think some of that has maybe something to do with their union bargaining.
Sure.
And so you might want to go, I can go back and check, and I will actually, Trish said I'm on the circuit. I am. One of my next stops is to go to the school board meeting in Austin and just kind of give an update on that and do some right question. That's the question, I think.
And that seemed like solved the problem of 12-month contract with the teacher.
Right. And it could be, I am completely speculating here. It could be that when the para union and the teachers union kind of go and negotiate their things, to have someone who doesn't have an advanced degree, they believe would not qualify for that type of payment. I have no idea why that would be. I'm just telling you that those are some of the discussions that I had.
That just doesn't make sense.
Nope, I understand.
So do they feel this is going to bring more parents into the field? I mean, is that the whole spirit of
The idea is that they would be able to retain quality people because they would be able to get unemployment during the summer and come back to a job that they want to do in the
Have you rehired?
Some are. I don't know if all are. I have heard that, I've heard that for some psychologists. I've heard that for maybe some bus drivers, like some of the, because this doesn't just mean paras. This means bus drivers, cafeteria. This is like any of your seasonal workers are part of it. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's going to be a lot of money. And that's great. We should value our employees. We just need to figure out a balance like this.
Thank you. Contract, travel, so.
I don't know what that, I agree. I just don't know how the school board, like what that looks like for a school board. That's all I'd have to, that's a caveat that I would say there.
I think one of the reasons would be that there's a lower hourly rate, so you spread that out over the year, and it's gonna really make not very much money that they're earning. But also having been a school administrator, a lot of parents get laid off in the spring as a way to kind of balance your budget as you've only got so much money and you're trying to figure it out. So they're laid off and you bring back as many as you can because you want to retain as many. Your teachers are contracted, and once they're tenured, you can't just lay them off. And so I think it is one flexibility tool to kind of manage your budget, which it shouldn't have to be.
I agree.
But it is. So I think that's one of the barriers.
And I think that, to your point, having then more direct money that's unrestricted would be much easier. We made a big dent in the special education cross subsidy, which for those of you who aren't in education, you're required to pay a certain amount of money for every child that's in special education. When it's more expensive than the money that you have, that's the cross subsidy means you're taking it from your general fund. We were able to pay a lot of money into that. And so that should be less of an issue we're hoping less of an issue for our schools. But much of the money that has been promised are restricted into very specific revenue streams that cannot just be used for something else. Thank you.
And I do think to thank you. We've been working for 20 years to get parity on among the 3 different correctional systems.
Yes.
And so finally, literally, I've been in this work for 20 years.
Yes.
Every year, the legislature tried to figure out a way to either consolidate and have one delivery system for probation, Center for Corrections, and never could do it. And finally, this year, figured out a way to equalize the pay.
That's through the Minnesota Association of Counties. They worked so hard. For that. And the League of Minnesota Cities and the Minnesota Association of Counties, the county, whatever, I always mix that one up, but they were pivotal in getting that together. Carly Stark is the person that you should be thanking for that.
There's one question. I heard that there was a lot of pushback around local option sales tax
Yes,
this year. What was that about?
that was in the House. That wasn't.
Okay.
Chair Gomez just doesn't like them.
So will that go forward next year? Like how do you think the feeling will be next year? It is the only thing that most cities have. You don't have when
You have a good ally in Senator Russ.
Yeah, Russ,
You have a good
should
ally.
fight.
In Senator
Okay.
Russ.
All right.
So sorry.
That's okay. In the interest of time, we'll transition over to Trish and the rest of the visitors from the county to give us some updates on.
Well, actually, I think we were just invited here to answer some questions maybe about our some changes that we've been having some big conversations about the mechanism that we are using to ensure that our septic systems are compliant throughout the county. And we had committees that met for several years to figure out what's the best way to do that. In many counties, they did just like a quintile. They picked 4 townships a year. They went to every single property that was in a rural municipal area, did compliance checks, then created an inventory of all the septics, and then at the end of 5 years, they knew the staff. Mower County chose not to do that. And instead thought maybe there's some other remedies, because the main remedy that exists now to do this is when property changes hands, you're required to update your septic system. You are in a rural area. And so that has been very helpful. But if we were looking at how long it would take us to get compliancy with all 3,600 septic systems that we have in the rural areas, it would be about 25 years. And so we thought that's kind of too long, because we are unusual in Mower County in that our water table is really high. So when your water table is just 10 inches under the ground, what seeps into that can get into, although we're one of the only counties that doesn't have a lake, we have lots of streams and rivers. And so having clean water is really, really important to us, and managed septic is important. So 25 years was really not acceptable. So how can we speed that up in the least government overreach way? And so one of the ideas and one that was selected was to tie permitting to getting a septic compliance. And so when you go in to get a permit to build a structure, you're required to provide a compliance that demonstrates that your septic system is working and functioning. And
That's if your system is over 20 years.
if your
of age.
system is over 20 years.
So it's
of
not
age,
any.
not just any, that's right. So if your system is over 20. And so that's been in place for about 2 years. And we began getting a lot of pushback on that because we kind of included every permit. So if you were adding a deck or if you were putting a small storage shed. And so the board went through a process and staffing, and the staff came back and said, well, how about if we exempt some small structures? So we exempted things like small buildings and decks. And then we really got pushback from farmers who were, say, building a grain bin on the property where their mother lives at, that's not even adjacent to a house. And like, why do I have to get a septic compliance check on my septic when I'm not even building it on the property where my house is, or there's no nexus between these two. And so we started having these kinds of conversations because people were having, and people do have a hard time understanding. I'm coming in, I am building a garage. There's no running water in there. How does that relate to my septic system? Well, the truth is it doesn't. It is just a tool for us to use to figure out, do you have a compliant septic system? And so, so we're at the point right now where the board is discussing, do we just keep going forward with what we have? Because we have to do something. And this is less, invasive, perhaps, than just going to every single house in a township and saying, you must do a compliance check. And if we paid for every one of those systems, it'd be over $1 million for us to just pay for everybody to get it. And so we're kind of in this place right now where we're just having this conversation. What are the best tools we have? We want to have our septic systems to be compliant. We don't want to be putting human E. coli into our water streams. We know we have challenges with that, and specifically in like Dobbins Creek area. And so we're just at this point where we're having that conversation. There are people who feel really strongly you should just go out and mandate everybody have a test and everybody have, show that it's compliant. And you have others who are saying, that's going to cost me $20,000. Why, but why do I have to do that? And so we are just here to answer any questions you may have about this or any ideas you might have about what we might do to, the end goal, I think we all have the same end goal. We want clean water. We want to make sure that we have clean water in Mower County, and the water that flows out of this county is clean when it leaves. And it's just how do you get that?
Does the county still offer the 4% loans or whatever it used to be for the, okay, and how much? Okay, and up to how much?
90% of the cost.
Okay. And then when was the last time that the compliance changed? Like what makes a septic compliant?
That hasn't changed at all.
That
Well,
hasn't
no, that
changed?
did change. That's kind of what triggered a lot of that's what triggered all counties to do these quintiles of check, because there was a change in soils,
In
right?
1996.
1996.
Yeah, the depth of the soils.
Yeah.
But a system that was put in before that time, if it's not in a sensitive area, it still won't pass with the
Right, but new ones being put in.
But new ones being put in have to meet that.
That is required. Yeah.
So if you have a system, for example, if you had a system that was put in, let's say 1995, before that 1996, and at that time you had to have a minimum of 24 inches. If you're not in a shoreline area or a wellhead protection area is for municipal well, where the municipality is getting their water for their citizens. If you're not in one of those areas, then if you have a compliance inspection on that system, you will still pass at that 24 inches. You're not subject to that 36 inches.
Okay.
But when that system fails, because the system will fail, it'll just over time, the soils will just become so saturated and they'll clog and they'll no longer take it. But when you upgrade that system, then you have to go to the new 36 inches, which in Mower County, because we have that high water table, you're going to see a lot of our systems become mound systems where at 24 inches, they may have been trench systems, but now they're going to become mound. we still have, systems in the county, about 30% of our systems that are going in now are still trench. I can tell you that I see a lot of those going down in like the Leroy area because of their lighter soils and some, you know, when you look at the maps of where these are going, some in the Lansing area. And then the rest is just kind of a hit and miss throughout the rest of the county. But 70% of the new systems going in, you will see as farm mounds.
For the financing, sorry, my last question. Can you apply for that before the deed is actually transferred into your name? So upon purchase, can they, at the same time they're getting their mortgage or whatever, can they apply for that septic grant?
Okay, so at the time of property transfer, so at the time of property transfer, either the buyer or the seller needs to put up an escrow of $30,000 or 1.25 times the written estimate that was, you know, somebody may have gotten. And that money is set aside at the time of property transfer to pay for that septic system. So when the loan is available is for when someone is putting the building on, that triggers it, because that money is set aside at the time of property transfer before that deed is transferred. That money is there for that purpose.
It wouldn't need a loan in theory, because you've already put the money there. That's
Well,
what are you saying?
but if they have the money to do it, I mean, that's a big chunk of money that we're expecting our sellers or our buyers to come up with. I mean, that kills a sale.
So are you saying that it would be valuable if that loan was available to people on the transfer?
Yes.
So instead of doing the escrow, that they'd be eligible.
Yes,
And then and that would be on the buyer's side.
right.
Because you
So
would.
yeah, you wouldn't be able to
So
get.
if the seller.
We might run out of money and not be able to fund, at a certain point, we'd be saturated.
So we get money from the state, called agency money that we have, it's kind of like a revolving loan fund that you're able to. But something that we can look at.
That would be wonderful. I think that would solve a lot of hardships and just people not being able to sell their home.
The challenge that the staff has, and the reason that we front loaded, if you will, that transaction is because when buyers and sellers enter an agreement and they put it contingent upon something after the deal, then things get forgotten about after the deal. And then we spend a lot of time chasing people around. By the way, you agreed to do this after the deal. And have you done this thing that you agreed to do after the deal? And we end up. So that's how that escrow account came into fruition, was because we wanted something on the table before anything was signed that committed them to replacing their septic system.
But I'm wondering if we couldn't do that with the loan as well.
We could, I'm just wanting the
Yeah,
group to
okay.
understand
Yeah.
the reason that we put that up front in the transaction is to secure it, so that it was done.
My apologies, I gotta go, but thank
Thanks,
you
Dean.
everybody for coming. It was a
Appreciate it.
Great group and.
So do you sell your?
Thank you for your work. See ya.
Good.
You still have to put them on.
No.
No.
No, if your septic system is compliant, the transfer just goes.
It's not old, but it's compliant.
You're good for 3 years. The compliance inspection is good for 3 years on an existing system. So this is why planning ahead is so important for people who are considering estate planning and transactions down the road. If I get a compliance inspection today and my system is good, I'm clear for that transaction for the next 3 years.
Now, did you say decks were exempt from getting a building permit? I mean, having to put a mount system if you build on the deck?
Yes. Unless
Okay.
you're in shoreland. If you're in a shoreland or on a non-conforming lot in a sensitive area, then any improvement to your property will trigger a compliance inspection.
And that's state law.
Because our friend just put on a deck and he got a picture of his house 2 years ago with no deck. Picture of his house now with the deck, and said he had to get a mount system in.
He might have been in a shoreline area, a
He's not.
sensitive area, or he might have what we call a non-conforming size lot. It's a substandard lot size.
It's out in the country.
Yep.
He's not near a creek or anything.
But was
You know,
it, maybe was it failing? Because they could, no.
No, what he did, he didn't get a building. So they said, since you didn't get a building permit, you have to put.
It wouldn't work that way. It would be, if you did, we sent out a postcard to people. So what we do is we have the GIS layers that every 3 years we fly, and then there is a change finder that shows, okay, this is the change, this is the change, this is the change. And you know, honestly, a lot of people who live out in rural areas are not aware that they even need a permit. right, to build a structure. And so we send out this kind of friendly little reminder that says, by the way, we've noticed that you've got a structure here that then we don't have a building permit on file, please contact us. And so people will contact us, and then sometimes we find out that they have a system that's older than 20 years. So it would be really, how old is their system?
Our
But
system is older than 20 years.
but you passed a compliance. Yeah, so that's the only thing that would trigger having to do a compliance inspection. So there's probably some piece of information that's missing that if we knew, we could help you understand, but we would never like just penalize somebody and say, just because you didn't get it, now we're gonna force you. We have an ordinance, which is just like state statute, that we follow, that what we do. And so even the changes that we're talking about with, we change the trigger mechanism, from a permit to be triggering it to doing something different. We're just gonna have the trigger be if your system's over 40 years, or if it's over 30 years, or something different. They would have to go through this legislative process with their ordinance to change it. So that our staff they really just follow what the board has approved as our ordinance.
You know, right now, the state of Minnesota, we're known as the hardest county to buy and build in because of our septic system.
And we have heard that, but we don't have the evidence of that. It's like,
I don't know, I was personally trying to buy some land and I got bad feedback that it wasn't gonna be able to happen. And it wasn't even checked upon, nothing, just boom, I'm not gonna let you build there.
Well, that could be beyond the septic system. We have restrictions as far as how much, you have a fair lot of land.
Yeah.
How many other properties are in that section? I mean, that's not.
One.
Well, I'm just saying, it's not just the septic.
Determine. So in Mower County, they have a limit of one dwelling per quarter section. So if you have a quarter section that already has a dwelling in it and it doesn't have any exemption criteria, that may be the only dwelling that's allowed in that area.
and that's because the highest and best use.
That
of the
dwelling
land-
wasn't in that quarter section at all. There's only one other dwelling in that corner section. One,
If there's one dwelling in the quarter section, that's all you're gonna get.
but I was putting in a different quarter section.
Well, we'd have to, look at it. I mean, that's the criteria.
And
And
it's one of
so,
the things that every county has something called a comprehensive land use plan that really dictates how you use the land. And the highest and best use of land in Mower County outside of city limits is agriculture. We are an ag county. That's what most of our value. People might think it's Cornell or think it's something else. It's agriculture land. That's what pays for all the services that get provided here is our ag land. So our comprehensive land use plan says agriculture is the highest and best use. And so we limit
very low
housing.
density.
So we want to have really low density. And so that hasn't been redone since 2006.
Or that is in 2003.
2003. So we are actually going to be partnering with the city and doing an RFP to go out and update our comprehensive land use plan. Maybe something has changed that maybe we'll change the density standards, but currently that's what they are because farming is just the best use of, has historically been the best use of the land. And so the city would like to have everybody building in the city because that's there. Because then you have a higher value. You want your value to be in your city proper in terms of your housing and things. But
That's where your infrastructure is. That's
And
where your
yeah.
wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah.
And for the $105 million wastewater treatment plant.
so the city would rather, have people putting up to city sewer. But there's, if there is this perception out there that we're the most difficult county to build in the rural area, part of that could be that the uniqueness of the fact that our water table is so high. And so we're at such risk in terms of anything that goes into the soil. We are at a greater risk than another county might be.
And not only do we have that higher water table, there's a portion of our county that has karst region. And so there's very little cover. The soil is what, when you have a certain amount and certain type of soil, that's what does the treatment before that sewage gets into the water table. It's treated. And then by the time it hits that water table, hopefully it's clean. And that's for that 36 inches. In some areas, we have karst region and there's no treatment. Once it gets through that first profile, it goes right into your rivers and streams. And so that's even at higher risk. And into the aquifers. And into your wells.
And so the reason that kind of came to our attention is that you would think with all the farming that what you would find in the water is animal E. coli, but we're finding human E. coli. And so the only place that that human E. coli can be coming from are septic systems where human beings are having effluent go into the water.
There's studies that have been done that take the DNA and they test for that, is that bacteria coming from a human or an animal, or what type of animal. And the larger portion of the E. coli in the streams and rivers in Mower County is consistently human. And so it's only one place that that comes from. And so that's why we targeted those septic systems for compliance and to decrease the time that those would be.
Does it have to be a mound system? Okay, so it's not that, it just depends on the water table, whether or not it can be.
In the ground or on a mountain.
Okay.
So a septic system has two components, the tank where your septic immediately goes and settles and pre-treats, and then the distribution field, which can either be in ground, which is a trench system, or it can be above ground, which is a mound system, or it can be some kind of hybrid of that, depending on how much oxygen is available in your local soils on your property for treatment. Oxygen is required for that treatment to kill the bacteria in the final stages. If they're individual wastewater treatment plants in people's backyards, that's what they are. So yeah, what type of distribution field you have is by your soils on your site, and it's not a decision that we'll make.
Okay.
And the soils can change in as little as 10 feet.
It's a really good conversation that we're having here today, and it highlights for me how complex these issues are. Why can't I build there? How come I have a mound system? Can you fund this or not? What causes the, although it's a complex issue, and we really do have to look at everybody almost case by case. Almost case by case, we have to know who that friend of yours was and what that situation was.
Mine was just, I was told I was not gonna be allowed to build there.
And how much misinformation there is out there. One person has a bad experience and they go to the coffee shop, and now that whole township has a completely skewed perspective of what the process is because one person got an answer that maybe didn't hear or missed a piece of information. So thanks for letting us come and speak today. I did bring, if you guys want, we have this flow chart that we created that's, do I need a compliance inspection on my septic system? And just kind of like steps you through the logic of, do you need it? Under today's ordinance, what causes a compliance inspection? But as Trish mentioned, we're in the process of reconsidering that. Is this the right mechanism, or do we want to take a different approach? So
What I would say on that, right? I mean, most people, like, you put your foot through your deck, right? I gotta spend 15,000 for a new deck. And then all of a sudden, on top of the 15,000 for the new deck, it's 15 to 20,000, whatever. For the, right. So my point is this, right? Instead of, and I understand you don't set the policy. I get that, but the feedback from my vantage point is if you could at least have an inspection system where within the next 3 years from now, my property is up for inspection, and you have a pretty good idea that you're gonna have to spend money to upgrade it, you can at least plan for the next 3 years instead of, I need a new grain bin because I'm out of space, because I just bought land and I spent money for that, and I gotta spend money for the grain bin, then all of a sudden I gotta spend money for this on top of it.
We're just not gonna get the green bin, which impacts A, B, and C as well.
So
That's good.
But Freeborn County did that, and that made everybody. I mean, they just.
Well, that's just Warren County though, they just.
Yeah. That was a huge issue.
So we could consider that, and the Freeborn County government that didn't do it. It was actually the watershed. So we would love the watershed district to kick on the project. Because the hardest thing about, I would say we have a lot of difficult jobs in the county, like working in the jail is hard, being the county engineer is hard, being the county administrator is hard. I will tell you, there is no more difficult job in the county than the job that this woman has. Because she's the kindest, nicest person I've ever met. And people think she's a horrible witch who makes up things and makes people's lives miserable because that's all she has to do in compliance. But unfortunately, she is what stands between you and clean water for this county. I mean, she's really the hero of clean water. And can our ordinance be better? Can we address how we get to compliance differently, absolutely. Give us your feedback because we want to help. But it's something that we have to do, and we are required, the state tells us things that we have to do, especially in shoreline, water that is more sensitive. So
Do you keep any metrics or data that can be shared of this is what the process is and this is what we caught in that net as a result of,
yes.
so it's not frivolous, it's not, there's value add to this.
Right, so I think we know that about since we've implemented permits triggering, we about 40% accurate of the 40 to 45% have been on.
So the problem I have with, not the problem, but
Yeah.
so when they come out and they do the compliance check, and we get to deal with this all the time, is you'll have one installer come out and they look at the soil, they look at the modeling, they just fail. So then a homeowner will go and spend another $600. The next installer say, don't make the soils fail. Third guy comes in and says, this is fine. And so it does seem to be, I know it's not such a subjective, but when they're looking at the soil samples, there seems to be a subjective nature of where they're seeing that modeling. And that's been part of the frustration because now I have clients that are going, well, we can't use Benji Bishop because he looks at the soils differently than X, Y, and Z.
I would take that complaint to the state of Minnesota, because those guys are licensed contractors that are supposed to use scientific evidence,
Correct.
you know?
And you're standing there and they're looking at the soils and they're looking at each other going, I don't know. And I don't know if you've looked at the soils, but the difference in color is so
It's very faint.
And so you're standing as a homeowner, you know, the difference between me spending $32,000 on a system that's 15 years old is a guy looking at difference in such a subtle huge word. of color.
Right. And they've seen it go the other way too, where, you had a system that, might have been faint and they called it too low. And then that person goes out of business and the next septic system contractor that comes in for the compliance inspection reviews it and it was put in too close to the water table and it's being replaced. So it's based on soil color?
Well, there's a lot of things. that
There's a
go
lot of
into
things
it.
that go into it. There's a lot, it's very complicated. Soils is a little bit more complex than you would think. And she has a degree, a master's degree in geology. And so it's this how I explain it to the average person is the water table in the soil goes up and down, just like a river does. And when it's sat there for hundreds of years, it leaves these small little flecks of rust particulates in the soil. And so you're looking in this pit or this probe, and you're looking at that profile, and you're trying to determine these little small flecks, where do they begin? And where they begin in that soil profile is where you mark it. And you say, this is and it's not the water table where you dig a hole and that's where the water is today. You have to find that, and you have to have the right amount of light, and you can't do it with a flashlight. You have to do it with sunlight.
You have to do it with sunlight when it's high enough in the sky between like November and April, or not between November and April when the sun is down low in the sky. You have to have.
I know
People have a more scientific way to.
the universe. Trainer on this, and they are the ones that you have to pass a test to do all this, and then it too depends on how many. If there's a certain percentage of rocks in that soil, then you have to call it a little higher.
But if you're standing there and there's two guys standing there, and they're looking at each other, do you see it? I don't know if you see it, and I've been on site sometimes, and that's from, I want clean water too, but the difference between somebody spending, what's the average, about 28 to 32,000 on a 6-year-old system is literally somebody holding up this metal probe and going, I don't know, what do another one and see.
Yep, and sometimes you want
it better wait till June.
and if they can move, sometimes they can get a better profile where that is, and so that's why they do that. And, some contractors are gonna be better than others at doing profiles, and But the state is the one that licenses them.
We don't have any control.
We are.
No, I'm shrinking it, and it's not a new process, it's just
Yeah.
there's certain parts of it
Yeah.
that if they were to take
That's
one
frustrating.
installer until they get.
And my friend had 38 holes dug trying to find where her septic system had to go, right in front of her house.
So it's interesting too, because it's a science, like it's a licensed science that is done right in front of you in your backyard. And, you know, if you could, I'm sure if you could stand in the operating room and hear the conversation about that the surgeons have about whether or not we're gonna tear this tendon or fix it to that, or fix it to this, or what about we use that over there? You know, we don't get to look in and judge other people's professional decision-making like we do septic professionals.
That is very true.
There was two other comments I'd like to make, just so that you're aware. The average lifespan of a septic system is anywhere from 10 to 30 years. We do see them go, we are seeing them go frequently to 40 years. I've seen one in 27 years go to 50 years of age. So that, I mean, so the lifespan, the average lifespan, you can imagine for a septic system is 30 years. And that's why in Mower County, we picked the 20-year. So if you were doing and adding value to your property, we picked the 20-year mark. There were discussions, you know, should we make it every time somebody improves their property? Because some counties do, like for instance, I know Blue Ridge County does. If you come in for a permit, you're improving your property, Stearns County does too. You have to show your septic system is compliant. My
You
personal,
said no. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt for the first 20 years.
for the first 20 years. And then we picked that 20 years so that sometimes your system will pass a compliance inspection, but it might be starting to show wear and tear. And so we thought 20 years was a good benchmark where a compliance inspection or an inspector, which is a private individual that the landowner is hiring, it's not the county, could tell you, hey, this system is going to pass this year, but you might want to start sucking away some money because it's kind of on its last leg. Kind of like your mechanic might tell you your engine's, it's hanging in there, but it's showing signs of weakness.
So you're saying these mount systems are only gonna last 20 years?
The 30 years on average is their lifespan. And that's depending on how the
How well you
homeowner
treat
treat, how well you treat it. Do you take care of it properly? There are things that you can put down your drain to, we have an education process in telling you how to take good care of your septic system and how not to ruin it and how to treat it right.
It needs bacteria, you know, bacteria are what does the work. Just like in your body, you have good bacteria and bad bacteria. The bacteria in your septic system is good bacteria, need it to be there. And so if you're constantly giving it antibacterial products, you're killing off the good bacteria. So there are ways that people can definitely manage and treat their septic systems for longevity.
Yeah. If you have a garbage disposal or you put a lot of grease cells and fats down your drain, you might be able to get away with that in the city pretty simply. But if you have your own septic system in the backyard, that can plug up your soil sooner and you know, shorten the life of your septic system.
So I live in the city, and you had to go, you had to have everybody whose house is over 50 years of age, have their clay pipes looked at to determine if there's anything in there.
They do that in Bloomsbury, that fence.
Yeah, do they? Because I think you have a lot of failing. Like I bought a house and my line was failing and it was $18,000 to put in a new line because you have to pay for it to the middle of the road. So, you know, septics are expensive whether you live in town or you live in the country but if you were to start doing that, I think if you don't have enough going on,
So we've done it, you know, because when I hear like, you know, we don't do annual inspections, like we kind of did a version of that with sump pumps.
Yeah.
You live in the city, right? You had somebody knock on your door, or else you will this summer, because we're doing the last section. It wasn't popular and it wasn't fun, and the mayor can tell you that he had to put in a sump pump in a place that he's never had water in his life. But we do have a version of that, but really, I mean, the key takeaway for me is I understand the frustration if you want to build a grain bin, why do I have to get a septic? But the reality is you are only doing that with folks whose septic systems have hit a lifespan that they likely might need replacing. And if somebody does have to fix it, it's because it's broken, you know, so.
Well, so that's the problem that people have, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna interject.
Mm.
It's still working, and so people's mindsets are, I flush the toilet, the water goes away. It's still
Right.
working, this is BS, why do I have to replace it? And what you have to help educate people is, yes, the water's still going away, but it might be polluting the rest of our water. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
been the
Your
biggest
drain field
problem.
might be plugged up, like it
I
might.
just want to give you a hug.
Really, you can save yourself a lot of headache and heartache with this, but just come into the city. We got lots of lots.
You should have a really good, clear understanding of some of the issues.
So if they pass inspection on their current septic system, they do not have to put it in.
No, correct.
No.
Okay,
For 3
3
years.
years.
3 years. then they agree.
No, no.
Yeah.
3 years.
They don't have to.
Turn it on.
Yeah.
40-year-old system that is 40-year-old.
Yeah, we're ready. But we're very high on the drain. I'm very high in Mower County,
Okay.
very high.
Where is that? It seems pretty flat to me.
It's out just off of County Road 104. Our house has been hit 5 times by lightning.
Okay.
And that's with lightning rods even on it. So I think we're pretty high up there. Yeah.
Exciting.
Thank you so much. They're just,
Yeah, thank you so much.
A lot of good conversation.
Coming along.
Yeah.
Well, you get it every day, so that's a while.
One note for next month, since the first Tuesday is in July 4th, I don't think anybody wants to be here. We will push that back 1 week to July 11th.
thank you.
I
Thank
don't
you.
know, I'll be at work on July 4th.
Ready for the march and the parade.
Thank you.
Thank you.